The anime opens with the heartbreaking death of Machio Hiraku, a young man who suffered from a fatal illness for years. However, his story doesn't end there. After passing away, Hiraku meets a benevolent god who offers him a second chance at life. Given the opportunity to make his dreams come true, Hiraku chooses to become a farmer, a profession he never had the chance to pursue in his previous life. After being granted a second chance at life by the god, Hiraku wakes up in an unfamiliar place surrounded by a vast jungle with no signs of civilization. However, he's not deterred by the challenge ahead and is ready to fulfill his dream of becoming a successful farmer. With the all-purpose farming hoe in hand, Hiraku sets out to cultivate the land. To his amazement, the tool is incredibly effective, making farming a breeze. He's able to hoe the land effortlessly, without feeling tired or worn out, even after working for long hours. As Hiraku continues his journey, he stumbles upon a vast expanse of land that seems perfect for farming. Excited by the discovery, he begins using his versatile tool to dig the soil and locate a source of water. With the water issue resolved, Hiraku decides to set up a residence on the land to ensure his safety. However, there's a problem. A massive tree is blocking the ideal location for his home. Without hesitation, Hiraku takes out his trusty axe and gives the tree a single chop, causing it to fall to the ground. Cutting through the tree is like slicing through butter, and Hiraku easily removes the wood from the area. With the tree out of the way, Hiraku begins planning his base. As night falls, Hiraku realizes that he needs a fire and a place to rest. Unfortunately, finding firewood in the dark proves to be a challenge. In a stroke of genius, he hollows out a giant tree trunk and makes it his temporary home for the night. As the sun rises, Hiraku awakens feeling refreshed and ready to tackle another day. He quickly realizes he needs to find a way to make fire for the upcoming nights. Using a magnifying glass, he harnesses the power of sunlight to start a fire with ease. With the fire issue resolved, Hiraku sets his sights on expanding the land by cutting down some trees and using the logs to build new structures. While hoeing the ground, a rabbit suddenly attacks him, forcing Hiraku to adapt and think quickly to defend himself. Next, Hiraku decides to build a toilet seat, but his first attempt is deemed inappropriate and needs to be repaired. Once the toilet is fixed, he focuses on planting vegetables in his newly cultivated field. However, he realizes he doesn't have any seeds, but to his surprise, the vegetables begin to grow without the need for seeds. To protect the plants, he constructs a barrier around them. As time goes by, Hiraku's daily routine revolves around watering the plants and building a better home for himself. As Hiraku gazed out from behind his barrier, he spotted two wounded wolves lounging outside. Despite their wild appearance, they seemed oddly docile. Taking a leap of faith, Hiraku constructed a makeshift bridge to invite the wolves into his neighborhood. Once they entered, he offered them a hearty meal of pork. Little did Hiraku know, the female wolf was carrying a litter of unborn cubs. As fate would have it, Hiraku's newly built wooden house became the perfect place for the wolves to give birth, transforming it into an unexpected wolf cage. Hiraku was forced to retreat back to his old tree hole, allowing the wolves to raise their offspring in peace. Days passed, and Hiraku could no longer resist the urge to check on the newborn cubs. To his surprise, 4 healthy wolf pups were born. Hiraku took on the role of caregiver, feeding and nurturing the young wolves. As time passed, Hiraku grew fond of the wolves and decided to build a bigger house to accommodate them all. Eventually, the time came to harvest Hiraku's vegetables. He discovered that the first crop to ripen was a batch of plump, juicy tomatoes. Impressed by their flavor, Hiraku continued tending to his plants, while the wolves kept watch to protect him from harm. Over time, Hiraku even gave the wolves names, Kuro and Yuki. Hiraku was delighted to discover that his new wolf companions, Yuki and Kuro, enjoyed the taste of tomatoes just as much as he did. As he harvested his crops for the second time, he was pleasantly surprised to find an even greater yield than before. Hiraku had come to appreciate the fertile soil and the tools that God had provided, allowing him to cultivate a diverse array of plants without the need for seeds. With his basic needs taken care of, Hiraku had plenty of free time on his hands. He used this time to build a statue of a god, filling his days with creativity and purpose. However, one thing that continued to elude him was the ability to season his food. Without access to salt or other spices, his meals remained bland and unappetizing. Thanks to Yuki and Kuro's guidance, Hiraku became more confident in exploring the surrounding area. He even ventured outside his original field to plant fruit trees, while playing catch with his furry companions. Hiraku continued to expand his farming operations by cutting down trees and adding new crops to his repertoire. As the cold weather descended upon him, Hiraku busied himself with preparing for the winter. But his quiet routine was interrupted by a sudden commotion outside his home. It was Yuki and Kuro, his wolf companions, barking frantically at the sight of a giant zabuton spider. Surprisingly, the spider turned out to be friendly and even had a talent for knitting. Hiraku was grateful for the handkerchief that the spider gifted him and offered to provide a regular supply of food in exchange for more of its knitted creations. From curtains to blankets, the spider's handmade products added warmth and comfort to Hiraku's isolated world. Despite his newfound companionship, boredom and loneliness began to gnaw at Hiraku. He longed for the taste of salt to liven up his meals, and the memory of his last human interaction weighed heavily on his mind. As the winter frost gave way to spring, Hiraku emerged from his humble abode, only to find his pack of wolves had grown significantly in size. The once small group had attracted other creatures from the nearby forest, including the formidable giant spider, Zabuton, who had numerous offspring. With a growing number of mouths to feed, Hiraku was eager to get to work on his farm. But just as he started hoeing, a piercing alarm from his wolves interrupted his peace. Rushing to the commotion, Hiraku was met with a fearful girl, who appeared to have angered his fierce companions. Despite the wolves' hostility towards her, Hiraku couldn't help but feel compassion towards the girl and made the decision to come to her aid. To his horror, instead of gratitude, the girl sank her teeth into Hiraku's flesh and began to draw blood. The once frail and fragile girl was now stronger, and her body expanded before Hiraku's very eyes. The shock of the attack was apparent on Hiraku's face, and his wolf companion, Kuro, leapt into action, attacking the girl until her newfound strength dissipated, causing her to shrink back down to her original size. Hiraku's cautious nature kicked in as he questioned the girl's motives, unsure if she was friend or foe. He couldn't comprehend why his pack had turned on her until he learned of her deadly deed. She had killed one of their own. Despite her past actions, Hiraku believed the girl to be harmless and offered to let her feed on his blood once more to regain her strength. Rurushiru, however, was reluctant, fearing that the act might lead to Hiraku's death. But Hiraku was willing to take the risk, confident in his own resilience. After the feeding, Rurushiru transformed into a teenage girl with a smaller stature than before. She confided in Hiraku that she had intentionally slain one of the wolves to protect herself from the relentless soldiers who were hunting her down. To ease her burden, Hiraku took Rurushiru to his bountiful fields and shared his ripe tomatoes with her. Delighted with the harvest and playful company, they spent the afternoon enjoying each other's company before returning to Hiraku's home to rest. As evening approached, Rurushiru revealed to Hiraku that she was a plant researcher who had become a fugitive from the soldiers after a dispute with some power-hungry nobles who aimed to steal her research results. Seeking refuge, she had heard rumors of the dangerous forest where Hiraku lived, which led her to seek sanctuary there. Hiraku found solace in Rurushiru's company, and he was no longer plagued by loneliness. However, when Rurushiru expressed her intention to leave, Hiraku couldn't bear the thought of being alone again and asked her to stay with him forever. Although Rurushiru was a vampire, Hiraku's desire for companionship surpassed all else. Initially, Rurushiru misunderstood Hiraku's request, thinking that he was proposing to her. But when she realized he only wanted them to live together, she was disappointed and angry. A frightened Hiraku then took the bold step of proposing marriage to Rurushiru, and to his relief, she accepted his proposal. They built a prosperous village together, and Rurushi helped Hiraku with his farming. Later, Rurushi shared her knowledge about salt, which Hiraku had been seeking. One day, Hiraku wanted to check on his fruit fields, and Rurushi agreed to accompany him after washing her face. As Hiraku and Ruru enjoyed their garden and sipped their tea, an unexpected alarm sounded. Without hesitation, they raced towards the danger, discovering a woman entangled in Zabuton's spider webs and surrounded by Hiraku's fierce wolves. The woman explained that she was an angel named Tia and had inadvertently attacked one of Hiraku's wolves. However, Tia's intentions were quickly called into question when she identified herself as an officer and attempted to apprehend Rura. In a frenzy to protect their beloved friend, Hiraku's wolves fiercely attacked Tia. Realizing the severity of the situation, Hiraku took them all to his home, where they shared their stories of how they came to cross paths. Eventually, Tia came to understand Rura's situation and apologized for her initial aggression. Together, they recalled their shared experiences and learned to put their differences aside in the name of unity. When Tia inquired about the identity of Rura's gallant savior, she was taken aback to learn that he was actually Ruru's husband, Hiraku. This revelation was unexpected because Ruru had previously been unsure about their relationship. Tia herself was a fierce angel warrior whose mission was to capture Ruru for the chaos she had caused in the city. After engaging in a heated argument, Ruru revealed that she had fled to the forest to escape Tia's clutches, as Tia was far stronger than her. After the incident with Hiraku's wolves, Ruru underwent a noticeable transformation. She became more composed and pliant. Excitedly, Ruru invited Tia to live with them, seeking Hiraku's approval. The bewildered Hiraku agreed, amazed to see the two former adversaries get along so well. The trio strolled around Hiraku's farm, which prompted Hiraku to admit that he could use some extra hands. Tia was taken aback, as she had also been assigned to work the farm. Ruru eagerly invited Tia to join in the harvesting, with Hiraku providing instructions. To everyone's surprise, Tia effortlessly harvested a cabbage. Hiraku then sprinkled the cabbage with salt and offered it to Tia, who found it delectable. After a long day of hard work, the exhausted trio took a well-deserved break inside Hiraku's home. Hiraku offered Tia some juicy strawberries, and Ruru couldn't resist pushing Tia to stay longer, secretly hoping to spend more time alone with her beloved husband. Days turned into weeks, and the trio continued to plant and harvest crops on Hiraku's farm. Their main crops were vegetables and fruits, and with Tia's presence, they were able to communicate better and even joked around. They also used their magical powers to help with heavy lifting, and their cooperation improved as a result. Tia even expressed her desire to plant strawberries, but Hiraku was hesitant because they were already having trouble with the harvest due to the farm's size. One day, after a long day of harvesting, Hiraku, Tia, and Ruru stumbled upon Kuro, the wolf cub, who had grown significantly since they last saw him. They also noticed that the wolf population had increased. To accommodate the growing wolf family, Hiraku quickly renovated their cage to make it more spacious and comfortable. Meanwhile, Zabuton's spider offspring had also started to leave the nest to live independently, but some chose to remain with their mother on the farm. As Tia asked for permission to leave, Hiraku felt a pang of fear that he might lose her, despite being married to Ruru, his beautiful wife. Tia soon returned with a group of high elves, who turned out to be her siblings, all with names Leaf, Lise, Lily, Lida, Lise, Likot, Lhasa, Lafa, Lhasa, Lami and Lasha. They had suffered greatly in a war with humans 200 years ago, which left them scattered and struggling to find a safe place to live. Tia asked Hiraku if they could stay with him, and he agreed on the condition that they could get along with the other residents. It was a touching moment as Tia's siblings, who had faced so much tragedy, found a new home and a glimmer of hope in their lives. With everyone's agreement, they set out to build a bigger house, and to Hiraku's surprise, the elves were far more skilled builders than he could have imagined. They completed the construction in just 10 days, providing a perfect new home for the elves to stay in. Hiraku was so impressed with the elves' techniques that he decided to use them to renovate his own house. Inspired by the spacious family room in the elves' house, where they gathered to eat and spend time together, Hiraku planned to make his own house even better. As the days passed, life became more cheerful, with the elves harvesting fresh food and enjoying their new home. Hiraku's primitive thinking led him to assume that the elves wouldn't want to use fire or eat anything other than fruits and vegetables. He was proven wrong when they started making tools and even created an iron furnace using bricks and logs to melt iron. The elves' first creation, a wok, was a great success and Hiraku was impressed. He also realized that he could expand his wheat field with the help of Tia and her siblings, which would allow them to make bread that tasted amazing. However, his happiness was interrupted when he learned that the land he had built on belonged to the Demon King. Ruru assured him that he didn't need to worry since he had built everything himself without the help of others, which meant he didn't need a license. As the evening fell, the girls were enjoying their dinner of fresh tomatoes and cucumbers when they couldn't help but be impressed by Hiraku's skills. They were amazed that he was able to tame the fierce internal wolf which roamed the area, and that the vegetables and fruits he grew were thriving despite the poor soil. They teased him good-naturedly for his lack of knowledge about the world. Later that night, Hiraku kept himself busy by making glass in his spare time. He always enjoyed using his free time to create something new. As the sun rose, Hiraku grabbed his gardening tools and headed to his garden as his daily routine. On his way, he stumbled upon Zabuton, who had caught a queen bee. Hiraku was curious about what Zabuton would do with it. However, instead of harming the bee, they both agreed to keep it and Hiraku constructed a special cage for it. 10 days later, the bee had become a beloved pet, and Hiraku noticed that the bee was unhappy due to the lack of flowers around. So, he decided to grow a garden of flowers to make the bee happy, and to produce honey for consumption. Hiraku had become a master at caring for bees, and he could enter their hive without being stung. Tia, on the other hand, was terrified of bees and could only watch from afar. Hiraku had a brilliant idea to make a reservoir there. With the help of a multi-purpose tool he believed was given by God, he single-handedly built the reservoir with perfection. As he walked alongside Tia, they brainstormed ideas for creating a good waterway. Hiraku initially considered using stones, but they were scarce. Wood was another option, but it would quickly rot and cause leakage. He finally decided to make concrete out of the soil dredged from the reservoir. Using his hammer, Hiraku transformed the soil into concrete and, with the help of elves, created a waterway from the river to their home. In a short time, the waterway was complete, and Hiraku's dream of having a reservoir had come true. He even made a place to catch fish that entered the waterway. Although Hiraku was thrilled to have fish to eat, the elves and Ruru were afraid to consume them since they came from the forest they feared. However, Hiraku confidently grilled the fish and found them to be delicious. He convinced Tia, Ruru, and others to try them, and they were pleasantly surprised by the savory flavor. As a result, everyone happily enjoyed the grilled fish together. With a surplus of fish, Hiraku decided to preserve them using the salting method. He salted and dried the fish, ensuring they could be enjoyed for days to come. Hiraku had a reservoir that could hold a lot of water, but he wanted to grow rice. Unfortunately, his first attempt at planting rice did not go as planned. However, Hiraku was determined to succeed, and he quickly used his multi-purpose tools to create rice fields near his home. The local girls, including Zabuton, watched as Hiraku worked tirelessly on his fields. At first, they didn't notice anything different from his previous attempts, but their curiosity piqued when Hiraku opened the water lid, and a torrent of water flowed into the fields. The girls thought Hiraku was creating a fish pond, but he surprised them by explaining how to grow rice in the flooded fields. With his enthusiasm and hard work, Hiraku turned the barren land into a thriving rice farm. Hiraku was determined to make his rice fields flourish, so he sought help from the elves to become field workers. With their guidance, Hiraku learned to navigate the slippery fields and plant rice slowly but surely. As Hiraku worked, he showed the elves how to plant rice by walking backward and dropping seeds. With a little practice, the elves became skilled at planting rice, and together, they created a bountiful crop. But their work was not yet finished. To ensure the rice grew well, Hiraku called upon the children of Zabuton to rid the fields of pests. With the tools gifted by God and the care of the children, the first rice harvest proved to be a success. Hiraku's persistence and teamwork had paid off, and they all celebrated the fruitful bounty of their hard work. The time had finally come for Hiraku and his team of elves to harvest their rice crop. Hiraku pulled out his trusty sickle and got to work while Tia and the other elves joined in, utilizing their skills to quickly collect the rice. After harvesting, Hiraku showed the elves how to dry the rice and then weed it, explaining the purpose of each step. Tia was impressed by Hiraku's knowledge and praised him for his skills. Next came the process of pounding the rice into white grains, which was slow and steady work. Hiraku explained to the elves that the raw rice couldn't be eaten and that there was still another process to go through before it could be cooked. As Hiraku cooked the rice, he called upon Ruru to light the fire. However, Ruru's spell was too powerful, and a massive flame erupted. Hiraku quickly instructed Ruru to cast a smaller fire spell to burn the wood he had provided. Hiraku, who had never tasted rice before in the world he lived in now. So, when he finally cooked some rice, he felt ecstatic. He molded the rice into balls and tasted them. The rice balls were incredibly delicious, and he shared them with Tia, Ruru, and Ria. They too were overwhelmed by the taste of the rice balls, as they had never eaten them before. Hiraku tried to eat another rice ball, but unfortunately, they were all devoured by the elves. Nevertheless, Hiraku vowed to make more rice balls next time so that everyone could have their fill. Since the rice had been harvested, they decided to plant more to ensure a steady supply of rice. After planting rice, Hiraku and the elves were covered in dirt. However, the elves could easily clean themselves with their magic, while Hiraku had to bathe and wash his clothes. Dreaming of soaking in a hot spring, Hiraku drew a sketch of it on the ground, which caught the elves' attention. They eagerly helped Hiraku build a warm bathhouse, which was half completed. But Hiraku was worried about the dirty water from the bath flowing into the river. Tia suggested using slime to eat the dirt, but Hiraku found the idea scary. Eventually, Tia brought lots of slime, and Hiraku put it in the filtering pool, solving the water problem. The next step was to prepare firewood to heat the water for the bath, but when Hiraku cut the wood, he found mushroom on it. Throughout his time in the isekai world, Hiraku had avoided eating mushrooms due to his fear of being poisoned. The elves warned him that distinguishing between poisonous and non-toxic mushrooms was difficult. However, after learning that most mushrooms were edible after being burned, Hiraku began to grow them. With a warm bath now complete, Hiraku gave a tutorial on how to bathe. He practiced while explaining, but got so caught up in the warmth of the water that he forgot he was teaching. The elves were eager to get in, and Hiraku felt awkward, but they invited him to join them. He had considered making a separate bath for himself, but the girls called him greedy for wanting one. The following day, Hiraku noticed that mushrooms had grown and decided to check on it. Just as he was about to look for it, Ruru called and informed him that she had invited her elf relatives to live there with them. The news thrilled everyone, and they began preparing for the new arrivals. With the increasing number of residents, they realized they needed to build a new house. After completing the new house, the girls worked tirelessly to create a luxurious house for Hiraku, even constructing an underground room. However, when Hiraku saw the room, he was taken aback. It appeared to be a room designed for multiple people to spend intimate time together. Hiraku quickly closed the room and tried to ignore the strange feeling in his gut. The scene transitions to Hiraku and his companions, who are now in their new kitchen, eager to try out a new recipe. Hiraku suggests that they visit the field that he had created during his spare time, where he had planted a variety of spices that could be used in cooking. Accompanied by the girls, Hiraku leads them to the field, where they collect the spices that they need. Donning his apron, Hiraku sets to work cooking with Ria by his side. He patiently guides her through the process of using the various spices they had collected. Their aim was to make a meat curry, and Hiraku is so engrossed in cooking the rice that he forgets to add Nan's special seasoning to the curry. As a result, he sets to work making Nan bread to accompany the curry. The aroma of Hiraku's cooking draws the attention of the girls and even Kuro, the wolf. They eagerly anticipate the dish, and upon its completion, they all sit down to enjoy the meal together. The food is so delicious that they all go back for seconds, with the elves praising Hiraku's culinary skills. The scene shifts to Hiraku, who is preparing for the upcoming winter. He knows that Zabuton will hibernate during this time, so he sets about providing enough food supplies for her to last through the season. In exchange for his help, Zabuton offers to make blankets for Hiraku. The girls are also busy preparing for winter, each utilizing their fire magic to complete their respective tasks. Hiraku, inspired by the elves' magical abilities, decides to try and learn some magic himself. He hopes that it will make his work easier, but unfortunately, he quickly realizes that he has no magical abilities. As winter sets in, they all hunker down in their cozy home, passing the time by playing games and enjoying each other's company. Hiraku decides to craft a traditional Japanese chess game, providing them with a fun and engaging pastime during the long, cold winter days. After Hiraku explains the rules of the Japanese chess game, Ruru challenges Tia to a match. Tia almost wins, but in a fit of frustration, Ruru overturns the board. However, she quickly restores the pieces to their original positions. Intrigued, Hiraku observes the game and is joined by Kuro, who proves to be an expert player. As the game concludes, they decide to try their hand at bowling. Hiraku makes his first attempt but only manages to knock down 8 pins. However, he learns from his mistake and knocks down all the pins on his second try. The girls also take turns bowling, and some show a natural talent for the game. Soon, bowling becomes a favorite pastime for all of them during the winter months. Time had passed for them as they went through a long winter. One sunny morning, Hiraku stepped out of the house followed by Tia and Ruru, and they talked about their plans for the day. Suddenly, Zabuton's alarm went off, warning them of imminent danger. They rushed to see what was happening, only to find a wyvern-like creature flying towards them. The elves identified it as a wyvern, not related to the dragon family, but it looked like it was on a rampage and could destroy everything. Panic set in as they prepared to face the threat of the wyvern. The wyvern released a powerful gust of wind and shot a massive fireball at them, but Tia and Ruru managed to hold it back with their shield magic. Despite their efforts, the wyvern's attack broke through and caused a fire on Hiraku's field. The elves rushed to extinguish the fire, while Hiraku searched for a way to repel the wyvern and protect his home and the girls. Driven by his determination, he took out his golden spear and hurled it at the wyvern, which retaliated with a counterattack. However, Hiraku's attack was stronger, penetrating the wyvern's shield and hitting its wings hard. He followed up with a second attack, bringing the creature down and killing it. Hiraku then invited Tia, Kuro, and the others to see the fallen wyvern and asked if there were many creatures like it. Tia replied that they existed in some places but were rare. When Tia suggested that the wyvern might have been sent by someone, Hiraku became suspicious and agreed with her. However, Tia explained that while the creature did belong to a group, it was unlikely to have been used for something like this, so it was probably a wild wyvern with no owner. Hiraku agreed and didn't think it was necessary to anticipate such a rare incident. He then asked if wyvern meat was edible, and Tia confirmed that it was not only edible but also delicious. She even mentioned a king who sent his troops to hunt wyverns for their meat. Excited to try it, they brought the wyvern meat home, and Hiraku immediately cooked up a feast with spice-grilled meat, steamed wyvern meat, and wyvern tail soup as the main courses. As they sat around the dining table, the group enjoyed their meal, savoring every bite of the delicious wyvern meat. However, Ruru and Tia seemed to be engrossed in a conversation, which piqued Hiraku's curiosity. When he asked them about it, they brushed it off as unimportant and continued to relish the meal. Meanwhile, in a royal castle, 3 officials, Bisel, Landan, and Britoa, received a report that their wyvern had been killed. They were worried that their enemies were making progress while they were still in the process of raising funds. Bisel suggested keeping the incident quiet to avoid public uproar and invited the other officials to discuss how to minimize the impact of the situation. Meanwhile, the enemy kingdom's official named Gucci was taken aback upon hearing the news of the wyvern's demise. Seeking advice from his own wyvern, Gucci was informed that they were not strong enough to withstand the previous attack, leaving him feeling uneasy. After careful consideration, they both agreed to avoid any conflict with Hiraku and to let the matter rest. The scene shifts to Hiraku, who was busy harvesting grapes. The harvest was unexpectedly bountiful, leaving him with an abundance of grapes. He decided to enlist the help of the elves to make wine using the squeezing technique, but they initially struggled and collided, resulting in a chaotic mess of grapes. Hiraku proposed a solution by suggesting they move in unison and sing while stomping on the grapes. With the rhythm and song equalized, they joyfully continued to press the grapes. Although hesitant at first, Hiraku eventually joined in and sang along with them. As the day turned to dusk, they finally finished pressing the grapes, and Hiraku was amazed by the significant yield they had obtained. In the meantime, the god who had sent Hiraku to the forest of death filled with ferocious monsters was being scolded by the furious goddess of agriculture. She was upset that an innocent human soul like Hiraku had been sent to such a dangerous place. However, there was a silver lining as there were no reports of Hiraku being in danger yet. Furthermore, the deity who had given Hiraku a sacred weapon was also reprimanded by the goddess of agriculture. The deity had given the tool to Hiraku, believing he would only use it for farming. However, the goddess had not been informed and was angry that a sacred weapon had been given to an ordinary person. She was concerned that Hiraku would not be able to handle the power of the weapon and would perish. The god assured her that Hiraku had a special and healthy body, making it difficult for him to die easily. However, this was no excuse for the deity's mistake. To make matters worse, the goddess of agriculture was irate that the statue of the deity that Hiraku used to pray to resembled a grandfather and grandmother. The deity finally kneeled and begged for forgiveness from the goddess of agriculture, who turned out to be his own daughter. Meanwhile, Hiraku was alerted by an alarm bell from Zabuton and prepared to investigate with his weapon in hand. It turned out that another girl, Flora, had been caught in the forest and tied up with spider webs by Zabuton. Flora was searching for her sister Ruru and was shocked to learn that an angel was chasing her in the forest. Hiraku introduced himself as Ruru's husband, and Flora was caught by Kuro, the infernal wolf that Hiraku had previously thought was a stray dog. Hiraku was impressed to learn that Kuro could spit fire, and this made him even more feared by the girls. Flora received an invitation from Hiraku to stay with him for a few days, but her initial response was rude and disrespectful. She perceived Hiraku as weak, and his pet wolf's aggressive behavior only confirmed her negative opinion of him. However, Ruru, who knew Hiraku well, explained that he was a strong and capable leader who had even defeated a wyvern. Flora realized her mistake and quickly apologized for her behavior. To make amends, Hiraku treated Flora to a delicious meal, which she found to be varied and flavorful. She was curious about the white substance in the dish and learned that it was tofu, a food that Hiraku had learned to make after many failed attempts. The dish was a fusion of traditional ingredients and modern cooking techniques that created a unique and delicious taste. Hiraku was proud of his culinary skills and explained that he could use all his cooking memories to create new dishes. Despite being unfamiliar with miso and soy sauce, Flora was impressed with the variety of flavors in the tofu dish. Hiraku patiently explained that miso and soy sauce were made from fermented soybeans, adding to Flora's culinary knowledge. Flora was puzzled by the concept of fermentation, but Hiraku patiently provided her with detailed explanations until she had a good grasp of the subject. Flora was grateful for the new knowledge she had acquired, which she meticulously recorded in her notes. The following day, Flora left Hiraku's place, but she returned the next day accompanied by a group of servants and cows. Tia, who was also present, felt envious of the other girls who had brought their respective races to the gathering. Feeling the need to compete, Tia approached Hiraku and requested permission to leave for a while. Without delay, Flora returned to Hiraku's place, accompanied by a group of people and animals. Her entourage included her trusted subordinate, Grand Maria, and Daga, a representative of the Lizardman tribe who brought a chicken as a gift. Hiraku was overjoyed with the unexpected presence, and Tia couldn't help but feel pleased with the turn of events. Hiraku's spacious and opulent house easily accommodated the new guests, and the added help of the servants made household chores more manageable. Flora's servants even took over the task of serving food to Hiraku, allowing him to relax and enjoy the company of his visitors. As for Tia's subordinates, they were assigned to patrol the areas of the forest where wyverns had previously been spotted. Meanwhile, the lizard men were tasked with assisting Hiraku in moving heavy objects to increase efficiency. Hiraku even gave a red tie to the lizard man leader as a symbol of recognition. Not to be outdone, Ria invited all of her forest friends to the gathering. The following day, Hiraku summoned everyone to the hall, leaving them wondering about the reason behind the meeting. As it turned out, Hiraku had gathered the leaders of each race in his house to announce the name of his newly established headquarters, which had become home to many. Suggestions for the name ranged from Death Forest to other unimaginative ideas, but none seemed suitable. It wasn't until the spider Zabuton proposed that they open the door and see the giant tree in front of them that Hiraku found inspiration. Thus, he christened his place Taiju Village, or Big Tree Village. As night fell, Hiraku excitedly announced the party he had organized and invited everyone to join in the celebration. They had prepared wine made from freshly pressed grapes, and spirits were high. It was then decided that Hiraku would be appointed as the village chief. Although he was initially hesitant, he eventually accepted the role. As the night went on, the girls indulged in the wine and many of them had already fallen asleep. However, Tia remained awake and noticed that Hiraku was drinking alone. She decided to join him and made a toast. As they continued drinking, Ruru stumbled upon them and demanded to make a toast as well. Despite Ruru's drunken state, Tia kindly invited her to join in. Hiraku couldn't believe his luck. He had always dreamed of creating a village, and now his dream was becoming a reality. He looked around at the happy faces of his friends, and knew that they would all live happily together in the Taiju village that he had built. The moral lesson that can be learned from this anime is to take chances and don't fear the unexpected. Obstacles may turn into blessings. Hiraku's story shows how being open to new things can lead to a fulfilling life.